Hello, everyone. Hi. Greetings. Again, I'm Melanie. I'm in Left Voice. We're about to get started, so thanks a lot for being here today. I'm really excited to discuss the Block Everything movement, lessons from it, how to build this fight internationally and here in the US. So the plan is that I will open things up a little bit, give a little introduction, and then we'll hear from a few different comrades. We have Pablo, Giacomo, and Leandro. I'll hear who are going to speak to us, and then we'll have a Q&A and discussion after that. Um, so yeah, and I will say, last logistical note, we are going to record and live stream the first part of this when I talk and the other comrades. And then once we open it up for Q&A and discussion, we will stop the recording. So with that said, Zoom is not a very secure platform, so feel free to turn your camera off, change your name to whatever you're comfortable with. No need to show your face if you don't want to and stuff like that. So that's the last little logistical note. Um, and yeah, so, oh yeah, I'll start the recording.
Recording in progress.
Okay, so my name is Melanie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of Left Voice and I work at the Met Museum, which which is about to have a union election actually with the UAW. So woohoo! But today I'm gonna introduce this event and our speakers. So as of now, it's November 2025, and we've been witnessing a live streamed genocide for over 2 years. Trump's plan that just got approved by the UN is far from a peace deal, in addition to the fact that Israel has violated the ceasefire agreement over and over again since October. This deal is legitimizing the occupation, blockade, and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people by Israel. But we've also seen historic resilience from the Palestinian people to the massive global protests, the student movement that started at Columbia and spread across the world, and the rise of anti-Zionist Jewish people with the resounding cry that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And recently, we saw one of the most important chapters of this resistance, which was the direct intervention of the working class to stop this genocide under the slogan Blocchiamo tutto. So in Italy on October 3rd, this culminated in a general strike against the genocide. Workers, students, and protesters shut down the entire country that day. And this was after weeks of protests that started in France and went all over Europe, calling to block everything. In September, the protests used the same slogan to mobilize against spending cuts and austerity. And so clearly, the working class of the world is fed up and does not want to accept greed, war, crises, or genocide. And the fight is nowhere near over. I know on November 28th, another general strike in Italy has been called. And I would say that this new chapter shows the path forward in the fight for Palestinian liberation and for all our liberation. The most powerful weapon we have in class war is the strike because it uses our strategic power as the working class. So part of the reason workers went on strike back in October was to support the Global Sumud Flotilla. Workers in Genoa said that they would shut down their port if they lost contact with their comrades on the flotilla for even 20 minutes. The flotilla was made up of hundreds of people from all over the world who saw the inaction of their governments in the face of genocide. And in response, they put their own lives on the line to break the siege. Among the flotilla activists was our comrade Bruno, who went as a spokesperson for the Brazilian delegation to the flotilla, as well as being a representative of the international network that Left Voice is part of, the Trotskyist fraction. And then in the US, over the past 2 years, we have seen a shift in public opinion. The myth that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism has been broken, and support for Israel has fallen to historic lows, while sympathy for Palestine is at historic highs. The role of the US in Israel's genocide is undeniable and impossible to ignore, and it's obvious that both capitalist parties are complicit in it. And then that same ideological shift that drove hundreds of people to join the Global Sumud Flotilla has also taken place within unions. Union bureaucracies in the US have historically been pro-Israel and Zionist, but workers in the pro-Palestine movement have been challenging this for the past 2 years, and in fact, probably much longer than that, but notably in the past 2 years that we're referencing. Um, and thanks to pressure from the rank and file and the broader movement for Palestine, the UAW called for a ceasefire back in December 2023, as well as the United Teachers of LA, the AFL-CIO, and other large unions. But yes, like these were significant shifts that were the result of rank and file organizing, but they did only take place as rhetoric or resolutions kind of on paper. And I would say that union leaderships are just as happy to keep it that way. And for example, also this year, workers who form the decision-making body of the National Education Association, which is the largest union in the US, voted to cut all ties with the Anti-Defamation League, which is a major, very prominent Zionist organization in the US. And in a top-down, totally undemocratic violation of that vote, the union leadership rejected the proposal and shot it down, despite it having majority support from workers. So it's clear how union leaderships place every border and constraint they possibly can on the labor movement for Palestine because of their allyship with the imperialist Democratic Party, their coziness with capitalist politicians on both sides of the aisle. See Sean O'Brien, president of the Teamsters, and Donald Trump, for example, and their investment into the Zionist project itself. Union bureaucracies have stood in the way of workers transforming pro-Palestine sentiment into action. But there have still been small but important examples of rank and file organizing that defies intimidation and co-optation. In 2024, in the midst of the wave of encampments on university campuses in solidarity with Palestine, members of the CUNY staff union held an assembly in the encampment and voted to hold a wildcat sick-out in solidarity with Palestine and with the student encampment and against the violent repression of the movement. And this was the first labor stoppage in the union's history, and it was for Palestine. And then also not long after that, 48,000 student and postdoctoral workers in the University of California system went on strike in protest of the university's repression of the encampments. Shout out to people here who were part of the UAW 4811 strike. Would love to hear from you in a little bit. And thanks for being here. And then this fight against repression is far from over. As we know from the campaign to reinstate 4 professors at CUNY whose jobs were taken away from them after they participated in pro-Palestine activism. We are fighting for their jobs back, and we stand in solidarity with professors and students all over the country who have faced retaliation for organizing in their schools and workplaces against genocide. So those are small examples, and Blochiamo Tutto was an even more powerful one. We would like to strategize and discuss about what happened and how we can grow the fight in the US. I feel like a question I'm asking and a lot of us are asking is like, can we please do that here and like take it even farther? Because I do think that it's possible. And also to like fight alongside our working class siblings around the world, because these lessons are important not only to understand the fight for Palestine, but also how this fight to end the genocide has also strengthened the fight in every country for democratic rights, against rearmament, and against authoritarianism and the far right. So as we engage in this debate, we have just entered a new scenario here in NYC, a global financial capital of the world, which is that Zoran Mamdani, a democratic socialist, won the mayoral election with decisive support from New Yorkers who oppose the genocide and who see connections between economic strife and social injustice. The energy that surrounded Mamdani's campaign and victory is the product of vibrant and disruptive new ways of thinking among the working class, sectors of the middle classes, youth, and oppressed people across the world. We could say it's a reaction to volatility in the domestic and international arenas, and a rejection of the neoliberal status quo, including the Democratic Party establishment, which is the face of this hated status quo here in the US. But here lies a key contradiction. Zoran expresses had to say hello. Zoran expresses a profound rejection of the Democratic Party, but is also still very much confined by its harness. And we're already seeing him descend in what I like to call the valley of betrayal, in a few different ways. And the biggest example being that earlier this week, he went to the Oval Office voluntarily, stood side by side with Donald Trump, shook his hand, and discussed with him their many agreements. And as one of the many wonderful comments on our Instagram post about this said, Zoran Mamdani is a politician, not a revolutionary. And I would say that our comrades around the world have shown us that it is actually possible to be both of those at the same time. But it is true that Mamdani would rather collaborate with this blood-soaked imperialist regime to negotiate for his limited demands instead of stoking class struggles so that we can all join the fight as political agents. But we also know that this phenomenon was never about Zoran himself. It's about the awakened generation of young people and workers who want to fight back against Trump's anti-immigrant, anti-worker imperialist agenda. The fight for Palestine has been a compass for our struggles in every country. Governments across the world have shown us that they don't have money for the basic needs of the working class and oppressed, but they do have billions of dollars available to support war, genocide, and imperialist business relationships. So around the world, the massive protests for Palestine, the inspiring general strike in Italy, and other examples of growing class struggle and class consciousness show us that the working class of the world is ready to fight. Here in the US, the enthusiasm for Mamdani, the insurgent labor movement led by workers who increasingly see themselves as protagonists in politics and society, including Starbucks workers who are currently on strike and have long been led by queer youth who are fighting precarity and oppression. This all shows us that it's possible here too. So strategy is something that we have to work and fight to clarify. In the case of Block Everything, and certainly in the case of every instance of worker struggle here in the US, we still have the huge question of an organized party. A working class party that is explicitly class independent and openly fights for socialism. So what would our movements look like and how much more powerful would they be? Very much so, I would say, if we had this leadership of our own. What of the danger when it comes to Mamdani and DSA? What of the danger of having that energy siphoned back into capitalist parties? This is an important thing that we would love to talk about at length with everyone here. So we in Left Voice put up this panel to discuss these issues, ask questions, and strategize around this phenomenon in the context of our experience here in the US so far, and how we can strengthen this fight here within the guts of the empire. We are part of the Trotskyist Fraction, which is an international network that connects us to socialist organizations in 14 countries, speaking 8 different languages. We're in struggle together with our comrades around the world against the genocide, against repression, against the precarity, abuse, and exploitation that workers face at the hands of ultra-rich bosses. US imperialism and the whole capitalist system must be smashed, and revolutionaries in the United States must be at the forefront of its demise from here, an imperialist bastion. So today we have invited comrades who have been engaging with this movement as well from their own positions. Before I introduce them, I'll leave you with the quote, "We wanted to liberate Palestine, but Palestine has liberated us." I will go ahead and introduce all three of them. I think after the first person goes, we'll also have a quick video greeting from a comrade in France. So that's a little sneak peek. But first I have Giacomo Turci, who is a director of Voce delle Lotte. Apologies for my pronunciation, but it's our sister publication in Italy. He's the administrator of the Italian section of the Marxist Internet Archive. He lives in Rome, where he's a teacher and a union delegate at the technical professional school Verne Magellano. Then I have Pablo Castilla, who participated in the encampment for Palestine at the University of Barcelona as a master's student last year. He's a part of the youth organization Contra Corriente in Barcelona and is a spokesperson for the global movement to Gaza and reported in detail on the movement and interception of the Global Sumud Flotilla. He's also a militant in the Revolutionary Workers' Current. And then third, we will have Leandro Lanfredi, who is an oil worker in Brazil's state-owned company Petrobras, a director of the Rio de Janeiro Oil Workers Union, and an editor for Esquerda Diario, the Brazilian sister site of Left Voice. And he's also an activist in the Movimento Revolucionario de Trabajadores, MRT, which is also Left Voice's sister organization in Brazil. This year, to say a little quickly, this year, Brazil's National Federation of Oil Workers and its various unions voted unanimously to demand not one drop of oil be given to Israel and demand that Brazil cut all diplomatic, military, and commercial ties with Israel. So we'll hear from each of them directly. I'm very excited and very happy that all three of them are here today. And then we'll have space for interventions, questions, comments, experiences, which I'm also really excited for. And so thank you very much. I think now I can turn it over to Giacomo.
Thank you, Melanie. Hello, everyone. It's very great to be here and talk to you from Italy. I'll try to be brief because there's a lot of things that can be discussed about our fantastic movement here. First of all, the same militants who were more dedicated to these years here in Italy were quite surprised by what happened on the 22nd of September when we had the first general strike in solidarity with Palestine, linked to the mission of the Global Sumud Flotilla, which had an enormous mediatic impact, everywhere in the world, but especially here in Europe, among other countries, in Italy, which had several people joining directly the fleet, including an activist, Giuseppe Voi, from the port of Genoa Workers Collective, which is part of the USB based trade union, which is the Italian union of the World Federation of Trade Unions. So we perceived strongly what was happening with the Global Sumud Flotilla, and that was very, very impressive that there was a large response from a large sector, not just working class, left-wing vanguard, or just the base trade unions. And the demonstration on the 27th of September were massive if we compare them with what was happening from the October 2023 in terms of movement of solidarity to Palestine against the genocide, against Zionism in Italy. And that was the beginning of a period in which a lot of things changed. A huge experience has been made by the Italian population, working class, and in which as Melanie said, the workers, the working class, its organization could be protagonists of the movement, and not just one of the categories of the subjects that can join the movement. And that has been something historical, especially in a country in which there has not been a huge wave of class struggle in the last years, and in which we have a right and far-right government led by Fratelli d'Italia, which is an evolution of the old fascist party here, which is normalized, let's say, as a nationalist far-right party, which is the hegemon of the government that we have now, with Giorgia Meloni as the head of government. So we came from a country in which, of course, there's a huge pressure on moving to the right every public political discourse to the centrality of struggling and even organizing general strikes to support the struggle of the Palestinian people to oppose the genocide and to fight here inside the European imperialism against every politic which is helping Israel, every politic which is raising militarism, which is raising the funds for militarization of the society, rearmament, etc. So it was a huge change in our politics, and this led to a strong enthusiasm about the possibility of organizing another general strike, not just led by one trade union or just a few smaller trade unions, but from a large coalition of the working class. And that has been possible on the 3rd of October, when the flotilla was attacked at the beginning of October, and immediately the trade unions had already discussed to launch a general strike, because Italy had a direct responsibility in this genocide. Italy is actually the third country that sends arms to Israel in terms of volume, after the US and Germany. And that general strike has been a huge success, considering the fact that the two other main trade unions in Italy, apart from CGIL, the trade union in which I do militancy, so WIL and CISL, were against the general strike. They are taking, especially CISL, a semi-pro-government stance. They're trying to collaborate with the government to differentiate themselves from this wave of class struggle, and these unions are quite massive. So thinking that these two large unions were against the general strike, we were able to make 51% of workers in Italy join the strike that day, which is a very huge number. Of course, we are a country with a trade union membership which is larger than the medium, but still, as I said, we weren't coming from years and years of intense class struggle. So it was a surprise even for us, even after the 22nd of September, that we could build such a large general strike with such a large sympathy from the population, with a large participation from the youth, from the precarious younger workers that we have here in Italy, after years and years of counter reforms about labor rights and conditions. And this coalition was able to organize the day after, the 4th of October, here in Rome, in the capital, a huge demonstration, more than 1 million of people, just the day after of flooding the streets of dozens and dozens of cities in the country during the day of the general strike. And another aspect which was very progressive and has to be taken back as a part of our tradition as the working class, as the organized movement of workers, even as socialists. So the current of the historical left wing in Europe and worldwide, that we were effectively blocking stuff. We were blocking streets. We were blocking ports. We were blocking hubs, logistical hubs, etc., etc. So we were able to set up a mass use of historical combative means of struggle of the working class, which were thought as something that can be done by small parts of the working class, but just some very left-wing trade unions, which are very small, etc., etc. We demonstrated that if the working class perceive themselves as being able to be at the center, protagonists of the opposition to the ruling class, to its governments, to its policies, to imperialist interventions, to repression, to the genocide in Palestine, we can put up an enormous fight and strength in the political struggle, and we can advance concretely with alternative solution to the crisis of the capitalist society as its whole. So as a political struggle relating to our immediate and day-to-day problems that we can have in our workplace, in our cities, not just as workers, but in our daily life as a whole, linking them. So linking our day-to-day routine as members of the working class, as members of unions, as members of base organization in the neighborhoods, etc., to a general political struggle. And so we can put the issue of not dividing an economic struggle from the political struggle, of setting back all the discourse coming from the right wing of the parliamentary parties, but also from the liberal parties in opposition here in Italy, that these kind of struggles cannot help the Palestinian people, that these kind of struggles cannot help Italian workers in bettering their material condition, etc. This precise evolution of the class struggle and the solidarity movement precisely gives the condition of bettering our conditions and bettering other people's condition as we are forging a unity, an international unity of the working class, and we are fighting against everything that can divide the working class and the possibility of setting up a common program of struggle and a possible solution to every question of society, which goes from low salaries as a problem that we can have in our country. We are among the few European countries in which salaries were not raising in the last 30 years, and linking this question to the fact that the money that could go in better young conditions and having better salaries goes to the politics of rearmament and the privatization of society, so making bosses making more profits out of processes like rearmament and privatization in a country like Italy. So concretely, what happened in this movement that can be very interesting to know about? We were able, as with the pressure from the base of the solidarity movement, of the trade unions membership, to make the most powerful bureaucracy in Italy, in the trade unions, the CGL bureaucracy, keep the promise of doing a general strike together with the left wing of the trade union, the base trade unions, so USB and other smaller trade unions, which was something that was happening, was never happening in the last decades So there was this artificial division between the historical based trade unions and the larger historical unions, and which were able to put up their conservative agendas that were making us losing battle from every battle as divided battles. While here we could strike together in a general strike, and this has been a very important historical experience for the working class in our country, and it's something that can be taken as an example for the solidarity movement and trade union militants, political militants of the left worldwide. How strong is the working class if we can set ourselves striking together, mobilizing together, discussing our political program, what should be done to make the movement go further and further, and how important is to be that a pressure from the base of unions, of popular organization, has to be put to advance with the struggle of recovering back trade unions as instruments of class struggle, instruments of working class democracy, instruments of class independency against the tentative by the ruling class of controlling our own organizations, of setting the agenda of the trade unions that should be independent from the government and from the ruling class. Now we are in a phase in which the trade union bureaucracy, the CGL trade union bureaucracy, already is trying to set back to the routine. So, for example, in continuity with the two strikes of the 22nd of September and the 3rd of October, we're having a general strike on the 28th, so next Friday. CGL decided not to join the strike, not to put every effort to continue our struggle against the genocide, against rearmament, together with the other trade unions, but they decided to proclaim another general strike on the 12th of December. So both the general strike will be against the financial law, which is centered on saving money for the rearmament, which is good that every trade union is organizing against the financial law. But the concept is the CGL trade union doesn't want class unity, the radicalization of class struggle, the centrality of workers. So the workers, the rank and file members being the center of the activity of the trade union, they don't want this to evolve further. And we here in Italy, as member of the Trotskyist faction, as member of trade unions, as member of organization in the youth, are struggling to keep that pressure and to discuss among all the activists that it's important to continue to elaborate an independent agenda from the center right and the center left, from the trade union bureaucracy that doesn't want class struggle to become the central factor of politics in our country and worldwide, that just want to propose us a moderate version of what we should do. So we're struggling because the workers should join the next general strike, should join the national demonstration that we will that will be here in Rome on the 29th of November. But we should, has left wings, have base trade unions, put an enormous pressure from inside and outside to the CGL to try to speak and convince the rank and file to renew their pressure to the leaders, because if the CGL is made by their base to not divide our movement, we can still strike united and with an enormous strength. And that is a very important lesson that the Italian population is having in this month, that if we strike unite, we are very strong. And it's very positive that a very large part of the public could concretely see what this means in a historical situation, and not just talking that abstractly. And this is a new part of a political conscience that is quite progressive in our country. I was reading surveys in October, and we are the European country with less consent in the militarization of society, in intervening in favor of Israel, of intervening in the military escalation in Ukraine, etc., etc. So this rejection, this mass rejection of militarism, of imperialist NATO policies, is going through a new phase in which a possible centrality of the working class as a political subject, and the importance of the unity of class struggle against the moderate agenda of trade union bureaucracy, can be part of our political heritage. Maybe I can stop here now, and then if there are some questions, I can answer.
Thank you, Giacomo. I think next we have Pablo, and then we'll do a bunch of questions after. Video now. Oh, just kidding. We also want to do the video first of Enda. Emma's gonna help me share it with you guys.
Hey, gonna share the video. If it doesn't work like right away, we'll just move on to Pablo. And I think is actually here in the meeting, so I translated it really, really fast. So if anything's wrong, Enda, feel free to correct us. Let's see. Okay. Yep. Oh, sorry. My leg is being weird. Let me just one more time try it. Share. This one. Share sound. Amazing. Oh, I do have that. Okay.
From Révolution.
Is it working? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear it. We could hear it. Yeah.
Permanente, the sister organization of Left Voice here in France. I tried to do this in English, but I think it's better in French, so I'm sorry. Donc oui, moi je suis enseignante en maternelle ici à côté de Paris, et je suis là pour parler du mouvement Bloquons tout qui a eu lieu au mois de septembre. Donc déjà les préparations ont eu lieu pendant l'été sur des boucles un petit peu sécurisées, bon, bref, du média Telegram. On voit que ça devait être quand même assez radical et important parce que le gouvernement a eu peur, et 2 jours avant le début, donc c'était normalement le 10 septembre, 2 jours avant le 8 septembre, le Premier ministre, François Bayrou, est tombé. Donc la chute du gouvernement a été causée par peur en fait de ce budget. Enfin, le gouvernement allait être censuré, et du coup le gouvernement a préféré sacrifier son Premier ministre et laisser quelques miettes à la population. À savoir 2 jours fériés devaient être supprimés, ils ont reculé sur ça. Par peur du coup de la mobilisation. Mais en fait, on a eu quand même des empêchements par la bureaucratie syndicale du coup nationale, qu'on appelle l'intersyndicale, qui a proposé une date le 18 septembre, donc 8 jours après le 10 septembre, en la proposant juste avant, pour essayer un petit peu de casser le mouvement du 10 septembre, qui a quand même eu lieu avec différentes actions, pas que la grève, mais aussi, enfin moins par la grève, mais aussi des blocages différents. mais assez quand même peu organisée malgré les âgés, ce qui a causé quand même de la répression. Mais la journée du 18 septembre a été massive et en fait, on a réussi à organiser un pôle pour la grève générale avec des travailleurs de plein de secteurs différents, de la santé, l'éducation, du transport, etc. Enfin, des transports, des travailleurs sociaux. En fait, on a réussi à prendre, on a dit qu'en fait, cette manifestation du 18 septembre, elle n'appartenait pas aux bureaucraties syndicales, mais que c'était les travailleurs qui devaient être devant avec nos revendications. Et dans nos revendications, il y avait évidemment la fin du génocide en Palestine, l'abandon du budget, l'augmentation générale des salaires et leur indexation sur l'inflation, des papiers pour tous, parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'offensives ici racistes et xénophobes comme sur les travailleurs étrangers et les personnes étrangères en général. Bon, on n'a pas encore, c'est pas encore du niveau de ICE aux États-Unis, bien sûr, mais voilà, c'est quand même très, très, très préoccupant. Et, euh, voilà, d'autres revendications. Et en fait, on a réussi le jour du 18 septembre à prendre la tête de la manifestation, à passer les cordons de police, etc., avec des lignes de travailleurs organisés, voilà, solides, et de syndicalistes aussi, de différents secteurs, avec une banderole gigantesque qui a fait un peu le tour du monde, enfin qui a fait quand même quelques unes, même aux États-Unis, avec écrit Macron démission, grève générale pour tout bloquer. Donc cette manifestation s'est bien passée et à la fin elle a été très durement réprimée. On a des vidéos de la répression, des forces de l'ordre qui ont pour consigne de s'attaquer à la banderole et de la déchirer. Bon, on l'a récupérée, elle a été recousue, mais quand même. Après, les bilans qu'on tire un petit peu de ce mouvement, c'est qu'ensuite, les directions syndicales ont refusé d'appeler à d'autres dates par la suite. Enfin, il y a eu une date le 2 octobre, mais qui n'était pas à militer, et d'attendre, toujours dans cette stratégie de dialogue social, d'attendre une discussion avec le gouvernement. Et évidemment, quand le gouvernement est tombé, bah, le budget austéritaire n'est pas tombé. Enfin, il y a toujours des milliards qui sont prévus pour la militarisation, avec de très très grosses coupes budgétaires dans la santé, l'éducation, tous les services publics. Et nous, on observait aussi évidemment ce qui se passait en Italie avec le mouvement Blocchiamo Tutto, qu'on n'a pas réussi à faire prendre ici, mais voilà, on pense que ça, c'est vraiment exemplaire et que c'est la solution, bloquer tout pour la Palestine. J'y reviendrai. Et ici, en fait, le mouvement pour la Palestine est beaucoup réprimé, avec des militants qui ont des procès pour apologie du terrorisme. Voilà, des personnes enfin, qui sont vraiment voilà, harcelées, stigmatisées et poursuivies judiciairement. Et donc là, on a une mobilisation samedi prochain, une manifestation nationale pour la Palestine. Donc voilà, mais je suis très contente de participer et d'écouter ce qui va se dire de façon internationale à cette réunion. So I would like to conclude by saying that here in France, we are following your struggle against, in the US against Trump, his austerity measures and his authoritarian attacks. Our fights for Palestine, immigrants' rights, and workers' rights all around the world are connected. Your struggle is our struggle. And I would like to add that everywhere in the world, workers have shown that we have power in our workplaces, with the youth, in the street. In the streets, we can fight against all these attacks. From Blocontu in France to Blocchiamo Tutto in Italy, to Blocchiamo Todo in the Spanish state. Now it's time to shut it down in the US. Free Palestine.
I was like, okay. That was wonderful. Thanks, Enda. And now for Pablo.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure for me. And I would like to start thinking about which is the meaning about all the Palestinian solidarity movement from all around the world these past years, because I think that it has shown up how the capitalist states act and how far they are committed with the genocide, with the complicity and supporting the state of Israel. I would like to talk especially about the Spanish state because I think that In many occasions, our government is seen internationally as a progressive government, one of the most progressive governments in the world, maybe the most progressive government in Europe. But I want to discuss that idea and to show how has the Spanish government act with the Palestinian cause, but also with other social problems. In terms of the Palestinian genocide committed by Israel, the Spanish government has never broken relations with Israel, has not broken political, economic, or cultural relations. It is still buying weapons to Israel. In fact, this year on 2025, the Spanish government was the leader of the European Union in terms of exportations and importations of weapons from Israel. Even I think that it's interesting to point out that the military bases of the United States in the Spanish state are very important for transporting weapons to Israel and other military. So we see that it's a government that it claims itself as a progressive government, but in fact it's still allied of Israel and maintains all the links with Israel. I point out this because I know that many times in the countries where the far right or the right is in the government, like in Italy or maybe in the United States, we could see like the Spanish government as a helpful government, as a government that helps the social movements, but that it's not the reality. In fact, we see that this government, that it's a supposed leftist government, has applied a lot of the right-wing agenda. It has increased the military budget. It has applied policies against the immigrants. It has repressed the social movements and especially the Palestinian movement this past month. And even we have a crisis on the housing rents because they are very, very high. So the young people, we cannot go from our parents' houses, and it's a big crisis for living in the States. So in this context, many social movements and especially the bureaucracies that lead the labor movement are very connected to the government, and in many terms, they justify the fear against the right to maintain the passivity or to maintain the acceptance of the bad conditions in life, the increase, as I said, of the military budget, of the problem with the housing, and all that social problems. The real problem is that while we maintain that passivity, while the social movements or the bureaucracies maintain their passivity linked to the government, the right, the far right, is growing up using all the discontent that generates that situation. I start talking about this because for me it's very important that the pro-Palestinian movement that has risen up this past year has broken the passivity and has been very important to confront our government. Since the mission of the Global Sumud Flotilla started, I think that it canalized all the discontent for Palestine, obviously, but also for all the social problems. As in many times in history, and as we see the last years, the students' movement that I'm part from was the first to act in solidarity with Palestine and to act in solidarity with the Global Sumud Flotilla. We saw the example of the Italian students movement or the dog walkers movement that called to block everything if the flotilla was assaulted. And that's what we try to replicate here in our universities. I'm part of a young youth organization called Contracorriente, and from our organization, we called for other organizations of students, for other students' unions to organize the response to the assault of the flotilla. In Catalonia, especially, we organize assemblies in all over the universities and the faculties of the region, especially in Barcelona. And that assemblies were very important for us because discuss about the response of the assault. We wanted to discuss how to act, how to blockade the university, how to shut down all the important structures. But we wanted to discuss what were our demands and what we defend, not only about Palestine, but all about other problems. In that sense, that was very important because in that assemblies, in our manifesto of the coordinations of all the students organizations, on the one hand, we call to block the universities, we call for the solidarity with the Palestinian people to end up with the relations with Israel, with the buying and exportations of weapons with the genocide state. But we also wanted to defend and to link our protest with the actions of the workers. Like in Italy, like in France, with the general strike in September. So in that sense, we started to have contact with the teachers union and unions from the education sectors. That was what was very important for us because that connection with the education unions led to a general strike in education in Catalonia on the 3rd of October. That was like the first big action in unity from the students and with the working class movement. That was especially in Catalonia, but we saw other actions of solidarity of the students and workers of education in Madrid, in Zaragoza, or in Euskadi, in the Basque Country, in the north of Spain. And that idea that the students should unite with the workers was very important for us and for the whole movement. This manifesto, these demands that we discussed at the university with all the organizations, express the solidarity with Palestine. But as Giacomo was saying before, this manifesto also claim against the increase of the military budgets. It claims against the imperialist role of the Spanish state, about the precariousness of the working class, and the responsibility of our government, that supposed progressist government. And that was very important because, as I said, as many years of passivity, as many years of the social movements being in the passiveness and being very supportive to the government because of that fear of the right, the solidarity with Palestine broke everything. So we, since that point, we started to call to the labor unions to call for a general strike on the 15th of October. That was an initiative that was promoted from the Global Movement to Gaza organization, but also with other pro-Palestinian organizations from the Spanish state, and was supported by the student movements and by many anti-capitalist sectors. That idea, the good point of that call for the general strike coming from the Palestinian movement. On the one side, we had that the leftist combative unions called for that strike. The most combative unions called for the strike on the 15th of October. That was a positive point, but the bad side was that the majority of the unions, the big unions of the working class here, didn't call for the strike. So at the end, we had a big day of struggle. We were able to block the universities, to shut down streets, roads, logistical structures, especially in that region of Catalonia and in the Basque Country, and at some points of Madrid and big cities. But we weren't able to do like a real effective general strike because of that opposition of the big unions, that big unions that are very linked to the government. So that was part of the discussion, like how we could force that union to call for the general strike. However, I have to say that the fact that the many teachers, workers from the healthcare system, many workers or workers also from the port, not the dog workers, but workers from the port, joined the protest was a huge point of support for the Palestinian movement and beyond. I think that, as Giacomo was saying before, this protest, this idea of bloqueémoslo todo, bloqueamos tutto, or shutting down the universities, the roads, and recovering the idea of a general strike, remind us the force that the working class has when it acts in their main core centers, that is in the working place. I think that we were very used to big demonstrations, to big manifestations on the streets, or even to the incumbents in the university that were huge, and they were very important to break the passivity and to denounce the role of our government. But that idea that the working class could take part in the protest and the working class has the huge force to stop everything, I think that was the big idea of that movement in the past months. I think that talking about the Spanish state with that supposed progressist government, I think that I have to point out the idea that we cannot trust any government. We can trust no government. It doesn't matter if it's a supposed progressist government or a conservative right-wing government. They have all shown that they are committed to the state of Israel, that they are committed with the genocide, that they are committed to the goal of increasing military budget in many terms. For example, Sanchez, the president of the Spanish state, agrees with Meloni, for example, in terms of anti-immigrants policies, or for example, as if we talk about the supposed peace agreement that promoted Trump with Netanyahu, the first international politician to support that plan was Pedro Sanchez. So we had that the president of the progressist country, in fact, he agrees with the plan for Gaza of Donald Trump. So that idea of no, we cannot trust the governments, and we cannot trust either those parties or those political projects that claim that they will enter into the institutions and that they will change everything from the institutions. Because I think that that's a very dangerous ideas, because at the end, when we rely our confidence, when we rely our forces on that kind of parties and promise to change everything from the institutions, first of all, they never do it. In Spain, we have the example of Podemos that row up after the protests against the economic crisis of 2008, and it was a party that entered in the government. And in the government, it applied the same agenda that I was talking before, of military budgets, of politics against the immigrants, about it has never broken the relations with Israel. And however, on the other side, we had that since they entered into the government and since they entered into the institutions, all the social movements, all the organizations in the universities, or the working class organizations against the defund of the public services decrease a lot. So I think that what we have to recover of this pro-Palestinian movement of solidarity, of international solidarity all around the world, is to recover the confidence on our own forces, of the forces of the working class in their in their workplaces, in unity with the young people, with the young organizations, and to fight against our capitalist government. It doesn't matter if they are conservative or progressive, and we have to develop our self-organization to do that fight, to discuss our demands, and to point out to the responsibility of the capitalist system and to attack their interests. I think that we are in a moment and that we repeat a lot the idea that the Palestinian cause is the cause of the humanity. I think that it's true because we are in a moment in which all the imperialist countries are increasing military budgets. The far right is growing at the same time. So they support all of them the state of Israel. That's why the fight of the working class and all the oppressed sectors is connected to the cause of the Palestinian people and to the fight of the Palestinian people. That's why I think we have to recover the idea to be confident on our own forces, and we show for a few days that we can stop the ports, that we can blockade roads, so we can also stop the war machine, and we also can stop all the reactionary policies that are applying our governments at this point.
Thank you so much, Pablo. Next we have Leandro, and then after Leandro goes, then we'll open it to questions. We'll take some in the chat and some in person too. I'll swivel the laptop around so you guys can come up if you want to. But that's the plan for after Leandro goes. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be in this conversation. I'm really glad to be participating. As Pablo, as Melanie first, as Giacomo said, the Palestinian people's struggle is the most important struggle of our time. In it, the main contradictions express themselves. It's the most important ally of US imperialism. It is also a trial ground for new weapons and software for the massacre of racialized people. And as many social movements here in Brazil say, the guns that kill over there, they kill over here. In Brazil, like the US, we have a Christian Zionist movement. And together with that, we have another difficulty in the solidarity movement. We have the contradiction that Lula's government uses a progressive speech on the matter of Palestine. It calls the Zionist entity for what it does. It calls it by its proper name. Lula names it a genocide, what Israel is doing. So it appears as the government is doing something. Brazil is also part of the international judicial action against Israel that is being conducted by together with Colombia and South Africa. Yet the Brazilian government allows a free trade agreement with Israel to continue to be in place, just like the Spanish state, as Pablo just said. Even though more than a dozen Brazilian nationals were on the flotilla on a humanitarian mission into a country that Brazil recognizes. Brazil recognizes a Palestinian state, and yet they were kidnapped by an invasion force, and Brazil remains with its ties with Israel intact. Brazil's imports of Israel continue to grow year by year. 2025, we are on a record high compared with the last few years. And one of the main things that Brazil imports from Israel are weapons. Weapons that are first trialed in Palestinian bodies and then later in the favelas here. The racist and brutal police forces we have in Brazil have training exercises with the IDF and other Zionist forces. We have spy technologies that are bought from Israel and applied here. And that didn't end with the Bolsonaro government, that reactionary bootleaker for Trump that just got preventively jailed yesterday by the same Supreme Court here in Brazil that helped him to power before. The war on terrorism language that Israel employs and that the US is now employing to try to engage militarily and to oppress the Venezuelan and Colombian people is growingly being used here in Brazil to attack favelas and saying that the war on drugs is a war on terrorism. But what it actually is, it's the killing of Black people in Brazil, like the recent slaughter we had in Rio a month ago with the police taking 117 lives. And the Trump administration applauded that. The Israeli ambassador applauded the action as well. The struggle against Zionism, so it has obvious connections here and would obviously strengthen the workers here. But in order to advance with our solidarity movement, we have to face the false progressivism of our national government, a government that's based on a party named the Workers' Party, with a workers' voting base, but it rules together with right-wing bourgeoisie that keeps all the attacks done against the workers that were done in the Temer and Bolsonaro government intact. That contradiction also expresses itself in the environment issues. We were just in COP30 conference, where the final document doesn't even mention the goal of ending the usage of fossil fuels. Brazil is increasing its production of oil here in benefit of imperialist corporations. We have now a record high participation of 39% imperialist corporations in Brazilian oil, and 46% of Petrobras, the company I work for, state-owned, 46% of its shares are now held in Wall Street. So it's a state-owned company run in the benefit of imperialism. And it's no wonder, with such a growing privatization and imperialist pillage of our oil, that it ends up being a key source to sustain the Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people. In 2024, amid this phase of the genocide, a genocide that didn't start now, it's the 8 decades of Nakba, but in this last 2 years, in 2024, Brazilian exports of crude oil to Israel increased 51%. And now we have no direct exports, but it keeps getting there through refineries in Italy. The majority of the trade unions here in Brazil, they're aligned with the Lula government. They don't want to pressure the government. So they're happy that by coincidence of a maintenance in one refinery in Israel, and then another was struck by Iranian missiles, that Brazil is not exporting directly. They're happy with that because they're not concerned that the Brazilian oil doesn't reach Israel. They're concerned in not criticizing the Brazilian government. And just like in the other issues, that's their main concern, not the workers' rights or the necessity of our international solidarity. So our struggle for an international solidarity movement with Palestine is also a struggle against the union bureaucracies. The same unions that failed to support or organize any important protest against the slaughter here that happened in the favelas in Rio are also silent about Palestine. They are silent about the exploitation of oil in the Amazon basin or the privatization of the rivers in the Amazon, which were strongly protested by the native peoples of Brazil during COP. So, but here in in the Rio de Janeiro Oil Workers Union and in the National Federation of Oil Workers, on which we hold a very small minority position, we struggle to develop a left independent stance in relationship with the Lula government and to develop a rank and file democratic self-organization orientation for the unions. We managed to pass a resolution in our most important decision body, like Melanie said in the beginning, in our regional Congress in Rio, then in the National Congress. We approved it unanimously that we want Brazil to break all ties with Israel, commercial, military, diplomatic, and we don't want any single drop of Brazilian oil to be delivered to Israel, be that directly or indirectly. With that resolution passed, we've participated as union in many solidarity protests here. We've organized protests in Petrobras headquarters. We had a symbolic 1-hour strike in a major oil terminal, saying we don't want any single drop of Brazilian oil to be shipped to Israel. Yet, it's not easy tracking the operations, and it's even harder to block the exports, as many of them happen directly through oil platforms over 100 miles away from the coast, directly from there towards their destiny. But we are doing our best to strengthen the workers' internationalist movement, its solidarity movement. That same struggle is also developing here in the universities. We had student and worker strikes in some universities and rallies demanding the universities to break ties with Israel and that was successful in a couple of universities in the last few months. It also speaks of the workers' power and potential. That's something that small and humble as showing the truth, how Brazilian oil gets to Israel, got such a relevant international attention, what we managed to show. It shows how much the unions, the major leaders of the unions, they strive to keep things as they are. They strive that the truth doesn't come out, and they to collaborate with governments and collaborate with Zionism and imperialism in the long run. But we've managed to show that. We participated in COP and showed that in the conference there. We showed that in an audience in the Brazilian Chamber of Representatives, House of Representatives. And we are trying to show that a genocide needs not only weapons and funding, it also needs oil to keep on going. And we need to stop that from flowing and fueling the genocide. We are inspired first and foremost by the Palestinian people and their struggle and their resistance, but also by the growing solidarity movement worldwide. From the mass protests to the university occupations that started in New York City and spread along the world. By the powerful general strikes we saw in Italy that Giacomo just spoke, that even forced labor bureaucracies as the CGL to come together in that strike, or in another sense, the strikes that happened in the Spanish state, as Pablo just mentioned. Around the Palestinian issue, we are starting to see, let's say, the first green sprouts of our centuries-old battle cry, workers of the world unite. We must nourish those green shoots, and in that struggle, we are strengthening not only the solidarity, but a grassroots rank and file revolutionary activity in the unions. Worker-student allegiance, we're strengthening a revolutionary stance. Not even through progressive national governments, as Pablo just spoke, we have the break of relationships with Israel. It is not shaking hands with Trump like Mondani, or keeping intact a free trade agreement like Lula does that we will advance. We will only advance through militant worker activity in every workplace towards a strong workers' independent political movement. And for that, we in the Trotskyist fraction put our effort in every country to build strong, independent, revolutionary workers' party. The struggle for a free Palestine, from the river to the sea, is the most important struggle of our time. And through it, we will advance not only our struggle against imperialism, but also against capitalism.
Ooh. Yes. Thanks, everyone. I will go ahead and stop the recording now. We heard some really amazing talks from the three comrades, and now we can maybe hear responses. So 1 second, let me put a stop to this.
Recording stopped.
Yay! Oh.
Say bye, live stream.
And bye to the live stream. Thanks for joining us.